Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talking Brazil Ball for another episode. We're back for episode, I think, 18. We're on now 18 and 19. I'm James Brook. I'm here once again with my co-host, George. How are you doing, George?
Yeah, okay, James. Thank you. How are you doing? Another week, another day, it's passed again, and here we are talking about Brazilian football.
Talking about Brazil ball again. Yeah,
Absolutely.
We've been trying to get our head around the fixtures a little bit. I think there's been a bit of mess around with the fixtures because of the postponement of the season, basically, wasn't there? So there was a bit of a rearrangement with a couple of match weeks, which we're just trying to navigate. So yeah, you like this bit, don't you? The theme song's still going on in the back there.
Yeah, it is. If people can just hear it.
Yeah, people won't be able to focus, I don't think, will they? They'll be too interested in the...
Well, let's turn that off then.
Turn it off. So I don't know. It's match week, I think 9 possibly or 10.
No, the way we've just worked it out, James. I know a bit of 2 and 4. I still quite understand. Well, I do now, but I didn't realise this at the time. But it would have been Matchday 10. The fixtures that would conclude Matchday 10 on Friday morning. But obviously, like you said, we've sort of jumped on in between because we didn't realise it was a match day. Basically, we thought it was just random, like you said, random fixtures.
Well, I think we're, because of the way that the week falls, you can't just do one every day. So because we like to try and keep it regular, we've arrived at a point of the match week where we've basically sliced it in half. So the time of recording on Wednesday. So what we're going to look at is half of the match week, and including one kind of rogue game, which is Cuiaba, which was one of the rearranged games from earlier in the season. So we're going to look at that. Then we're going to look at 4 games from the current match week. As you say, George, the rest of the games are on either Thursday or Friday. So that's the other half of the match week, which we're going to bypass a little bit because there is another match week at the weekend. So before we get to a little confusing, I think you just run through those fixtures, because we're only going to look at 5 fixtures basically. So 4 of them were part of the current match week. One of them was a bit of a rogue kind of outlier, but it happened since the last show. So we'll look at the games, all of the games since we did the last show.
I think that's the way. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it while it's just settling down, James. Go from the last show to the next show and just cover the amount of games that has gone on. Although now we've worked it out, to be fair.
Well, yeah, but it's still going to be 2 match days before each of the next 2 shows. So like you say, you're absolutely right. The old philosophy, isn't it? 1 game at a time. If you're going for a title, 1 game at a time, you don't look beyond the next week. We don't look beyond the next show at Talking Brazil Ball. So let's just focus on what's in front of us. So if you run through those fixtures, George, and we'll get on with the show that we've got, and then we'll look ahead to what's coming kind of towards the end.
Absolutely, James. That's, let's sum it up nicely there, and let's run through the, like you said, the games since we last talked. So here we go then. Like you said, James, there's 5. Hang on a second. There's 5 fixtures in all, and it began on Sunday, June the 9th. Big win, James, for Cuiaba, their first of the season. In fact, the show is going to be named after Cuiaba in celebrating their win. 5-2 they won at Cuiaba on Sunday evening. Into Tuesday then, Atletico GO2, Corinthians 2, Juventude 1, Vitória 1. And then this morning, as of recording, Wednesday morning, Botafogo 1, Fluminense 0, and RB Bragantino 1, Atletico MG Galo, they won 2-1 away at RB Bragantino.
Yep, so just 5 games that we're going to look at today. Those were the results. So some interesting results nonetheless, even though there was only a couple of games. And like you say, George, an enormous win for Cuiaba, which we will go into a bit more detail a little bit later on. But as usual, we've got our games of the week to kind of to delve into and look a little bit further into. So I believe you were doing the Rio Derby, Botafogo against Fluminense. So that feels like a good place to start, seeing as it was yet another. I mean, we said on the show last week that Denise might be kind of coming up to real last chance saloon with a result or a poor result in this one. I still don't feel like that's the case, to be honest, but I know you've been quite kind of feeling like Denise is, you're pushing him towards the edge of the cliff a bit. So what are your thoughts after this one? Another defeat for Fluminense.
Well, again, like you said, it ended 1-0 to Botafogo. And again, I'm calling for him to go. I think, I'm calling for him to go, James. I think it's 8 games in now. I know you said that, his continental form, the continental form of Fluminense, was keeping him afloat. But surely now, 8 games in, they're sitting in 16th place, just a point and a place above the relegation zone. It's Cuiaba who are sitting in 17th position on 5 points. Fleur only got 6. And I just think, look, they lined up this morning as it is, with a back 5, including your pal in goal, Fabio, who didn't get dropped. It's an average age, I think, of 35, James. The youngest fella in there is Marlon, the centre back, who I think came in. It's only his second appearance of the season. He hasn't played since, I think he played last week actually, but he's the youngest of the group there. He's 28. The rest of them are at least 34 years old. And then the goalkeeper, who's 43. So, and there's in amongst it, there's older players as well in the starting 11 as well. Ganso 34, Cano 36. So you just think, is it time for a change? Is it time to go a bit younger and just change it up a bit here, because it's clearly not working, and before they know it, they'll be sleepwalking into relegation here.
Well, I mean, you're right to point out Fabio. We've been quite hard on him. I was reading actually that he kept them in it in this game, that it was because of him that they didn't get a battering. So, you've got to hold your hands up when he does have a good game. But, he did cost them last week, and he has cost them in previous games as well. But you're absolutely right. And again, it's worth pointing out to the listeners that amongst all of that aged back 4, they're going to add Thiago Silva again, and you'd imagine he'd possibly replace Marlon. So he'll. I mean, he's 38 now, I think, Thiago Silva. So maybe even 39. So he's going to boost that average age yet again. So it is a bit of a, if you can get at them, it doesn't matter what league you're in, there's always going to be young, sprightly players. And if you've got an average age of 30 odd in the back line, you might be in trouble. So I don't necessarily disagree with that. But what about the game itself, Botafogo today? Because, I mean, it must be said it's a really big win, another good win for Botafogo, who are rumbling on quite nicely, and they go to the top of the table with this win.
Yeah, like you said, James, they're top, the new leaders. They're on 16 points, 2 points ahead of Flamengo currently, who play next on Friday, I think. But yeah, for them, it was huge. It was a massive win. You've got to say that Arthur Jorge, he's really got them playing well. It's always, it's a massive coup for Botafogo, this, James. Him coming from Braga.
Yeah.
You think these sort of middle of the road in the Portuguese league, Braga are decent, but it's a massive appointment, that, and he's done really well in this league. Obviously, no disrespect to Serie A, we love it, we cover it every week, but it's not at the same quality as the Portuguese league, is it? So he's coming in and he's got them going really well. That's why I'm really interested to see how the Vasco manager does, obviously coming from the same league. To see if he can get Vasco going up, up and at it. But in this game, they battered them, James. Flu had the most possession, but they didn't really do much with it. Like you said, Fabio kept Fluminense in it, really. I mean, loads of shots for Botafogo, 19 shots in all. Fluminense didn't even have a shot on target, James. So that just tells you the whole story. It's just a sorry state of affairs there at the moment. I mean, but the goal itself, I mean, it's Bastos, the Angolan fellow. It's his first goal for Botafogo since arriving there from Rostov, which is a Russian team. He arrived in August of last year. First goal is a centre back, but he's not the tallest of centre backs, James. And this one is a pathetic attempt at defending. The corner kick came in. He just gets up and heads it in. There's not even a challenge on him, and he goes bonkers. He gets a big cuddle off his manager. And you mentioned Thiago Silva. He, in fact, he spoke after the game about Thiago Silva, saying that how much he admires Thiago Silva, basically. And he sort of idolizes him, really. And he admires Thiago Silva. He was coming out after the game, obviously scored the winning goal. And Arthur Jorge as well, they seem like the settling well in Brazil. There was an interview with his wife as well, Maria Jose, as well, which came out, I think, after the game. And he jokes around with her that she should be on the bench. He says to her, she knows, she gives him a lot of critique about the games and how well he can do better or whatever. So it sounds like they're doing pretty well there. But as far as Fluminense go, James, it's a real mess. And like I said, I think it's time to mix it up and potentially put some younger players in there. I think they have on the bench there quite one or two younger players, the likes of Isaac and, there's one or two others. But, it just needs change for me.
Yeah, he's a big talent, Isaac. It'd be interesting to see if Denise does turn to him. I don't get the impression he will, but like you say, he can't just keep on with the same way. They haven't had a horribly difficult run of fixtures, and they've only won one game in the Brasileirão out of 8, and that really isn't good enough. So, the season hasn't quite got away from them just yet. There's still a long, long way to go, but it is looking like it's going to be a difficulty for them basically to push into the kind of continental places. But anyway, the flip side of that is that Botafogo trundle on and do get another good win under Arthur Jorge. So hopefully they can sustain that this time after last year's disappointment at collapse, wasn't it, at the end of the season? So I'm sure the fans are getting cautiously optimistic ahead of hopefully not a repeat of last year. So yeah, that sounds like a decent game, really, a pretty fair result in the end by the sounds. It was a nice goal from Bastos. I know it was pretty unchallenged, but it was a well met header. He met it well and right in the corner past Fabio. So is there anything else you'd like to add on that one just before we move on to my game of the week?
Not really, James. Like I said, Botafogo top of the league. Jorge's good and playing well. And Fluminense really need to book their ideas up. No wins in 5. Like you said, 1 win in 8 games in the league is just not good enough. And yeah, I'm still, like I said, banging the drum for him to go, because I think this team, or just mix it up at the very least, because this team needs to be doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very, very fair, I think. I don't know who they've got next. Oh, they've got Atletico Gio at home. So, I mean, unbelievably, that's a relegation 6 points at this moment in time. Gio would move ahead of them if they beat them there, and that'd be kind of unthinkable. So let's keep an eye on that one for over the weekend. Anyway, so yeah, well done, George. Thank you for that. That was a good roundup of the game in Rio. And I'm going to take a look at the other, well, not the other end of the table, I guess. It's kind of around Fluminense's area. I'm going to look at Juventude against Vitória. So this was, we forget actually, I don't know if we mentioned really, but there were 3 teams kind of affected by the flooding in Rio Grande do Sul. So we know about Grêmio and Internacional in Porto Alegre, but Juventude were also affected in Caxias do Sul, which is a little, in the same region basically. But they were actually playing at home in this game at the Estadio Alfredo Jaconi. So I don't know if they were perhaps slightly better, the damage wasn't quite as bad, or I don't know. It'll be interesting to see this weekend if the other games, or Gremio certainly are playing at home, I think. It'll be interesting to see if they do go ahead. Yeah, they are playing at home. No, sorry, they're not. They're playing away.
No,
No,
they're
they're away
playing. They're playing at
into
home on Sunday, though.
home on Sunday. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if those are open because, like I say, Juventus they were at home for this one, and they've been doing all right. Juventus, we both kind of backed them to stay up, and they're making good on that. The 12th after this game, so it was a 1-1 draw with Vittoria, which I think in the end was. It looks like a very fair result based on kind of the shots and the XG. Everything was quite similar. So it was a point apiece. I think on the basis of it, you wouldn't say it's a bad point really for either of them. Juventude, it keeps them kind of ticking without pulling them into danger. Vittoria, it's another point on the board. But I did see that the Juventude fans were not happy with the performance after the game, basically. They have been doing all right, and it seems that obviously with Vittoria yet to record a win, Juventude at home, they really thought they should win. I saw quite a few of them actually calling for a return of Jean Carlos, who is a friend of the
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
yeah, I
That
mean,
was.
he's still out injured, Jean Carlos, but fans were kind of, hoping for his speedy recovery and saying, we're no good basically without Jean Carlos. So we like him, don't we, George? I know it's been a while since we've seen him in action.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they want him there. I think we want him there as well, back and firing for Juve because yeah, we like him. I mean, I think that goal of the round is actually sponsored by him or named after him in some way. So
Yeah,
yeah, he's a favourite of ours, and hopefully he can get back on the pitch soon, and for their sake as well.
well, they're hoping so, but in my opinion, it's not a terrible point for them. I think the manager was similarly kind of philosophical, Roger Machado, who we haven't really mentioned yet this season, but we should have done really because Juve are kind of defying the odds a little bit. 7 games, 10 points, only 1 loss out of the 7, which is pretty impressive when you consider the records of the likes of Fluminense, Corinthians, Vasco, who are all below them. And so he's doing a good job, Mercado. But he did say after this one, he said, the Brasileirão does not forgive those who do not kill the game. So he was essentially saying, if we don't kind of finish these teams off, finish these games off, we might be in trouble ourselves. And I think that's probably a fair reflection on Juve's position. On the other side of the dugout was an interesting one, which I hadn't realised going into the game. But, it's easy to miss these appointments when you're not kind of plugged into it properly. But Tiago Carpini is actually back, George. Remember him?
Yeah, he got sacked from Sao Paulo. He was
Yeah.
at Juventus. It was a big game for him, wasn't it?
Well, that's
He won them promotion last season.
yeah, well remembered he did. So he was back at Juventus just a couple of months, on from guiding them up and leaving for Sao Paulo. And he was, I don't know what the relationship was between them. Obviously, Juve couldn't have stood in his way. He was on his way to a really big side, an opportunity he probably couldn't turn down. And he did say after the game that he was happy to be back and seeing friends. He left he said he happy to see old faces and this kind of a thing. And he also interestingly spoke about, the other flip side of that is that he knows the team incredibly well and he knew what he was expecting, basically. So he spoke a little bit about, insider knowledge and just being a little aware of how Juve would play. And I think he's done all right so far, Carpini. He's only been there for 4 games, 3 in the Brasileirão. They've lost 2 of them. Sorry, they lost the cup game to get Botafogo. They lost his first game, but since then they've picked up 2 draws, which is obviously 2/3 of their points this season. So 2 draws in a row, Cuiaba and Juventude, 2 decent results really, stop the rot. So yeah, Carpini's doing a decent job there, and it was good to see him, back straight away because it was a bit of a rough kind of end of the stick he got at Sao Paulo, and I think he's a talented coach. Obviously, he's a very young coach, isn't he? I think he's only in his 30s still. So, yeah,
39. He'll be soon be 40.
Yeah, so he's a young coach either way. So good for him to be back, and I think he was more positive than than Mercado on the other side. But for me, a point that both of them can take and move on from and be relatively okay about.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree, James, to be fair on that. Both promoted at the start of the season, probably take a point, like you said, Juventud, keep some kind of mid-table-ish, 5 points away from the drop. And Vittoria probably just happy to get back in the game from 1-0 down and get a point on the board. And I'm sure Carpini will get them going again. And but Juve look good. I mean, the one that caught my eye on in this game, James, that we talk about Fabio who's 43, but the fella Nini, he's 42, and he got the assist in this game. He's 42, centre midfielder.
Flipping
He's come from Vasco last year, April last year, to Juventud. He's played for the likes of Monaco, for PSG.
Oh, Nene, yes. Is it Nene? Yeah, Nene. Yeah, of course.
West Ham as well. So, Nene, but 42. So, like, fair play. They do give them the opportunities, even at ages where perhaps in other leagues they wouldn't do. So, yeah, fair play. He got the assist.
Yeah, I remember Nene. Of course, he was good for PSG actually for a bit. Yeah, it was a nice corner, good headed goal. What caught my eye in this one was actually the numbers on the back of the Juventud players' shirts. I think I noticed it last week. I forgot to mention it. I think it must be a regular thing, but on the back of the shirts, the numbers are basically in like a green and pink and yellow, like a 3 split colorway. I don't know if you've seen that, George. It's quite eye-catching. I wondered whether it was some kind of a LGBT thing or something like that, but I don't think it is because they had it last week. They had it again this week. So nice little touch there.
Yeah, they do. They tend to do things like that in the Brasileirão, James, in the Serie A. With the shirt numbers, with the shirt names on the shirts and stuff. I noticed once, I can't remember which the team was, but they put like some kind of it wasn't Marvel. I think it was I can't remember what it was, but they'd incorporated these pictures into the numbers. So, and it was a homage to the man who created. I think it was Dragon Ball Z actually, and it was a homage to the man who created Dragon Ball Z. But they had like characters on the numbers and things like this. So yeah, they're not afraid to mess it about. Obviously, the league itself probably doesn't have regulations like say the Premier League do. So there's a little bit more scope for a little bit more creativity, which is good to see, really, James. That's it doesn't have to be all cut and dry, does it? You know what I mean? There's room for a little bit of fun about, and that's good.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right about the regulations. You wouldn't be allowed to do that kind of thing in the Premier League, and I think indeed in other leagues across Europe as well. I like that Botafogo shirt as well, just behind you. That's one of the really good ones this season, I think. But anyway, that kind of wraps up the games of the week.
We'll have to pick one, James, at the end of the season or something to
shirt of the year.
Yeah, the favourites, or each get one or something like this.
Yeah, I think I like that Botafogo one. It's a nice, it's like an old tennis shirt with the collar. I like it.
It looks like a cardi.
Looks a bit like a cardi. Yeah, I quite like that as well for the weather we've got at the minute.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, let's get on. Let's get into the meat of why everybody wants to listen to Talking Brazil Ball, which is the Talking Brazil Ball Awards. So even though there was only half a match week that we're covering this time, it's a bit cheating, really, because we haven't given everybody a fair crack of the whip. Some will say maybe there'll be an asterisk next to these awards. I don't know, but anyway, we have picked a player of the round, and I think there were a couple of candidates, weren't there?
There was, James. You know what I mean? Before we get on and say who it is, I mean, well, I think there was maybe only one from the game we were looking at, or maybe a couple actually from these ones we were looking at. Definitely one was, I think he can feel a bit mugged off actually by us, to be fair, James. Yuri Alberto, who got 2 goals. He put Corinthians 2-0 up. Obviously, they squandered a 2-goal lead against Gio, but they did have to play most of the game with 10 men. Gustavo Henrique got himself sent off 10 minutes before half time. And Yuri Alberto, he got two lovely, to be fair, lovely goals. Again, you talk about shirts. I like this Corinthians one. I don't know if you've seen it, James. Like a faded kind of effort, which can probably sum up their efforts in this match. To be fair, but he got two lovely goals, but he has not it. There's also a man playing for Cuiaba who obviously, like we said, got a massive win by the name of Jonathan Cafu, and he got 2 assists in this match. Again, obviously they got a massive glut of goals. They were probably due it, weren't they, James? Seemed to have every game 0-0, but he is not it either. So, but he was close again.
Yeah, I think they're the two that were in the running for sure. But the winner was a Cuiaba player as well. Like you said, it was their, I mean, unbelievably, which I hadn't realised, George, it was actually their first goals of the season. They hadn't scored up until this game. And it's quite amazing that when you think about it, but they all, like it all often does, it wasn't a scrappy 1-0 win. They put 5 past Cuiaba, so they all came at once. And the man who got 2 of those goals was Clayson. So he's the man who we're giving the player of the round award to this time. 29-year-old winger, obviously for Cuiaba. So two nice goals, weren't they?
Oh, they were definitely, James. First one was a nice sort of low finish, wasn't it, to the keeper's near side, and I like the second one. I'm sure you did as well, where he cut in from the left hand side and buried it, sort of bent it round into the opposite corner. It was and like I said, I didn't realise it either, but like I said, they always seem to be drawing 0-0 or losing by goals to 0. So, yeah. You can only give it a Cuiaba player, I thought, this week. And obviously he's come up trumps and been the best of the bunch, really, although there were plenty to talk about as well. Plenty of goals and assists and whatever around the team. So, yeah, fantastic. I mean, he's had a bit of a strange career, hasn't he, really? If, played in the likes of Saudi Arabia and Japan. So, he found his way back to Brazil with Cuiaba last July. And, maybe a little bit of a shining light, 29-year-old, so he's not a young player. But, certainly got them off to a great start here. Actually, no, he didn't score the first one, but he added 2 goals, and got them going, really.
I couldn't really understand that second goal. The first one was nice. He kind of did the keeper with the eyes and slots it to his right. But the second one, it looks like a bit of a mishit to me. He kind of slices it somehow. He kind of hits across it, but at the same time somehow bends it into the corner. I don't know. It was a weird kind of finish, but it made it stand out. And I think, like you said, we could have given it Yuri Alberto. I think he was probably in second place, but just in the nature of the game, I think Corinthians, obviously no fault of his really, but they collapsed and gave up that 2-goal lead. Whereas Cuiaba, it was such a big win for them both in terms of the scoreline and in terms of what it meant for them that I think we had to give it a Cuiaba player, and Clayson was the one who really stood out. I think another thing to point out from that game was I remember you kind of slagging off Cuiaba about. I mean, it was maybe quite astute in a way where you said that. I think it was towards the start of the season. You said you didn't know where the goals were going to come from, and you picked on this chap Pitter. And I think it was a bit uncalled for that. You just slated him. And I don't know why you slated him really, but he's actually had quite a good season. And he got the first goal here. It was a bit of a scrappy finish, but he was in there. And he's actually got 9 goals now in all competitions. Obviously his first one in the Brasileirão, but he's got 9 in all competitions. So I just wondered if you've got a response to that kind of pit, or if you stand by. I know he looks a bit like you, actually, doesn't he? You were slagging off his appearance.
Yeah,
a bit with a big beard. And...
Pitter bread, no, he does. He looks, he's got good style, obviously, James. He does. He looks similar to me with a hair and a beard. He was actually, you'd like this, and I'm sure you've seen this, James. He shares a birthday with ourselves as well, doesn't he?
Oh, does he?
So I'm sorry to him. To be fair, he's a good man, and he's got 9 goals already. Yeah, 14th of August, 1999. So
yeah, a bit younger than us. Yeah,
24. But yeah, Paraguayan. Yeah, to be fair, if he's listening, Isidro Pitta. Yeah, I'm sorry for calling out there because he's got a lot going for him by the look of that.
Yeah, well, we'll keep up to date with his how he's doing. But like I say, he's doing quite well. He's been a bit of a point of kind of reference for them in when they haven't been scoring. I think even he's a big lad, isn't he? He holds it
Yeah,
up. So I mean, like you said, he's relatively young. He'll be 25 this summer, but perhaps if he can keep it up, somebody might nab him from somewhere. Like you said, Paraguay. I don't think he's in the Copa America squad, is he? Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have been playing here. So I don't think he's in the international team, but. Still, maybe there's plenty of time for him to get into that. But as well in this game, there was another notable moment I just wanted to touch on was the final goal of the game, which was a first ever professional goal for the left back Ramon. And it was, it was notable for the reason that it was his first ever goal. He said he didn't know how to celebrate. He just didn't know what to do. But it was also notable for the woeful kind of efforts of the Cuiaba players, because there were two teams in this game. Obviously, Cuiaba got the goals, but Cuiaba didn't half help them with some of the things they were doing. I mean, that final goal was pathetic. The guy, it's good play from Ramon. He lays it off to the other lad who kind of flicks it back through to him, but the defenders just stand still. They just completely stop and allow him just to run at the goalkeeper. So I thought they started quite well, but they have seemed to have hit a bit of a patch, and you do worry about them now.
yeah, you have to really, James. Like I said, it was nice little bit of play for Ramon. He slipped it in nicely, didn't he? But it was pretty statuesque defending, and yeah, you do have to worry a little bit. I don't think they've won in some time now, James. Well, actually, no, it's only two games,
Yeah,
two league games anyway. But you know, and they only lost it late against Palmeiras as well. But that's two home
true.
games where, well, that's actually three home games if you include the Brazilian Cup game against Bahia. Three home games where they've not won any of those games. You did think maybe when they got back to 4-2, 2 goals in 3 minutes, that
Yeah,
maybe something might come of it, but yeah, it didn't in the end. They really do need to book their ideas up. Although I think both of us at the start of the season didn't give them much of a hope. Really, I know
no,
they've got Yannick Balassi there, but since those that really nice game that he had a couple of months ago, he hasn't really done anything. And that game against Vasco was great, but that's maybe where he's peaked. They've also got Adair up there at the top as well, Italian Brazilian fella. I think he was an Italian international, wasn't he?
yeah,
So
it was. I think, yeah,
they've got to pull something out of somewhere. Tobias Figueiredo, who I think played for Forest for a bit. Yeah, he played for Forest for quite a long time. He scored, I think it was a header, Portuguese guy. But yeah, they just need something from somewhere. It's not good enough, really.
I think they had the sending off at 4-2, and that probably killed them a little bit. But either way, they weren't getting back into that. But anyway, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent. But again, the player of the round, well deserved in that game, was Clayson. So somebody might have a better game in the games coming up for the rest of the round. But for now, it's his title. So moving on, George, onto the goal of the round. So we'll just have a quick look at if there were any contenders again for that, because I think there were again quite a few nice-ish goals. We've already spoken about Clayson's, which stood out for its kind of slightly unorthodox kind of finish. Yuri Alberto as well. I think two quite decent goals. The first one, nice drill finish. The second one was a kind of nice round the corner finish into the roof of the net, which was quite pleasing. Yeah, Bastos, I know you were lamenting the defending, but I thought it was a decent header. Willian in my game, the Vittoria game, was a bit unlucky, really. He had a nice kind of long range bender and it hit the post and came back off the keeper and went in. But actually, I think they gave it to him in the end, which is a bit bizarre because usually that's
Yeah.
a goal, isn't it? But I think he did actually get that one. So I don't know if any others caught your eye as well. Or
No, I think the one that I was initially going to pick because I saw it first, to be fair, was the one you mentioned, was Yuri Alberto. It was his second one because it
yeah,
was a lovely cross ball, and the fella who set it up, it was Rodrigo Garo. It was his first time ball, like a little cutback, and he first time just kind of placed it nicely above the goalkeeper. And initially, when I saw that, I thought, right, that's it. I think that's going to win this. But then I saw the eventual winner, and I think that one was well and truly, head and shoulders above that one in the end.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, James, it's a goal that, if we look back on all of the ones that we've picked, and even if we go to the end of the season potentially and have a look, it'll be close. It'll be up there. This one, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it really did stand out. So the eventual winner. So we didn't give it Yuri Alberto again. So he might be kind of upset. He's kind of come second place in 2 awards, hasn't he? So
that's what I mean. He can feel a bit mugged off really by us, really, because he's had a good game round there, but obviously not by our standards.
No, it's high standards on these awards. So the winner was Evangelista of Red Bull Bragantino. So do you want to talk us through it, George? I know you were creaming your pants over this one, weren't you?
Well, it might as well have been. It was a. Yeah, I don't know, James. I think it come from it was just. I think it might have even been a corner or down by the corner.
Short corner.
It was a short corner. He's on the edge of the box, just like hovering, and he just kind of like really nonchalantly just like passes the ball into the top corner. It's just first time. He didn't even have to set himself. He just just really nonchalantly just like passes it into the top corner from, I don't even know how many yards out, 30 yards out, is it? 20 odd yards out?
Yeah, it's probably 20, it's not that far from the edge of the area. It's probably about 22 or 3. But yeah, he just kind of steps into it.
Just like, like a everyday's kind of Sunday morning pass. It was just like and it ended up in the top corner. I thought it was excellent, and it was obviously meant to happen, I suppose. So, fair play to him, and he got them on the way. Unfortunately, for their point of view, and not from mine, Gallo came back to win, but it was a lovely way to set up the game. To be fair,
yeah, it kind of kept rising as it went in. It was you don't see a goal like that very often, which is, I think, why you say that when we look back on the goals of the season that we've picked, it'll stand out just because of the slightly unorthodox way that it went in, really. What kind of struck me about it was the reaction of the crowd. It was a really dark game. First of all, it was I don't know if the floodlights weren't working properly. It was incredibly dark there, and there was just barely any reaction. I think it must have been a really small crowd because it was a hell of a goal, and nobody really did anything. And what was even weirder was the celebration from the player. So the camera kind of pans away, and then it kind of searches for him. It moves because he's not in the shot, and he's kind of run off, and he's like, I don't even know what he's doing. He's like, he's looking towards the bench, and I don't know what he's doing. He's doing some kind of a weird dance or something, but there's nobody else around him. His teammates didn't seem to care at all. He just kind of buried his worldly. Nobody cared. The crowd didn't care. His teammates didn't care, and he was just off by himself doing some kind of weird ritual dance.
It was a bit strange, wasn't it, James? Maybe they just don't like him, or maybe they had an argument or something before the game, but not literally. Yeah, he was, because I thought the same thing. He was like literally the camera caught up with him, and he was like halfway in his own half, like halfway in his own half, doing some kind of strange like motion, and I think it was actually caught on the camera. What the kind of, it was like pointing, I think, to something.
It was. I mean, he was, because initially I thought he was crying or something, but he was smiling. It wasn't as weird as we're making it sound.
No,
he was celebrating, but it just seemed a bit odd that nobody came to see him. But like you're saying, maybe they fell out with him, and I could tell you a reason why they might have fallen out with him, actually, George. So I was looking around, and what kind of became apparent was that he potentially might be on the move. He might be heading to Corinthians, Evangelista. So they asked him after the game about a kind of a link with Corinthians, which seems to be kind of on the kind of doing the rounds. And so he said it's been 6 months since they started prowling and probing. I'd be a hypocrite to say I wouldn't consider a proposal, and I think everybody in my shoes would do the same. I have a lot of respect for Bragantino. I love it here, but it's Corinthians. We talked, but I'm focused here. So he paid respect to Bragantino. He's been there a while, I think, but he also said, look, if the option comes up, I'm possibly going to be leaving. So that could have been why maybe he's not the most popular man in the dressing room at the minute.
Right, I see. I mean, he has been there for a little while, James. He went initially on loan. He was on loan from Nantes, actually, in France. He's been about Europe as even Lister. He's been he's been around Europe, all sorts of places:
He's played in
Italy,
France, like you
Portugal,
say,
France, Greece.
yeah.
And he was initially came on loan after he'd been for a season on loan at Vitória de Guimarães in Portugal in August of 2020. And then he made that permanent in June of 2021. So he's been there ever since. So like July of 2021, nearly 2 years. Sorry, nearly 3 years he's been there. Former Brazilian under 21 international as well. So he's obviously got something. Corinthians. I mean, I wouldn't say is Corinthians much of a step up than Bragantino. At this point, I'm not really that sure.
Well, in football terms, possibly not, no. But in terms of prestige, as a Brazilian player, it's one of the big boys, isn't it, really? But in terms of on the pitch at the minute, probably not, no. But yeah, he has been around. He's been all over the place, Evangelista, and he's obviously picked up some kind of tricks wherever he's been. And in terms of the game itself, like you said, Gallo came back after that kind of blow and came back to win. It was two kind of sucker punches just before half time, 2 goals in a couple of minutes that just brought them back into it and eventually kind of won it for them. So they're again going pretty well. They've not lost for a little while, I don't think. They're actually still unbeaten, aren't they, in the Brasileirão this season, which are the only 2 teams still unbeaten, Fortaleza and Galo. Galo have played one more than them. So, yeah, a very important win, really. Leapfrogged Bragantino in the kind of the process. Now they're a point ahead with the game in hand as well. So they've kind of pushed them below them. Milito going well, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, James, and I think the fans are pretty happy with obviously how they're getting on, and a couple of draws here and there that probably didn't help them maybe towards the start of the season as well. But they've really got going as the weeks have gone on, and yeah, they brought it back, like you said, a couple of goals in a couple of minutes. They were sort of a bit of a counter-attack kind of first ones. Aracho made a real profited really off some horrible defending from Bragantino, really mix up in the defence there. But he slotted it in nicely off the post. And then the second one's just a case of long ball up, pumped up by, I think it was Gomez, Igor Gomez. Nice and then Paulino just he was quicker basically than the defence and just finished it off neatly and, past the goalkeeper. That was only his 3rd goal of the season, I think. So he's taken a little while to get going. There was no Hulk at all in the squad. I'm not sure why that was, to be honest. They seem to have a lot of young players on, which we'll touch on, shortly. But yeah, I mean, Zaracho he was linked with Leeds, not in the not too long ago, a couple of years ago. So I was keeping an eye on his progress. But yeah, it was a good win, and they're going pretty well. Yeah, can't complain too much.
Yeah, I think he's a previous goal of the round winner, was he, Zaracho? I think he won one of the awards. Yeah, well, let's touch on now because we may as well move on to the young player of the round. And like you said, Gallo really did have 3 standout players, really, one of which did win the award. Before we just touch on them, just going back to Corinthians, because it's worth pointing out that Gabriel Moscardo, who is one of the kind of the standout young players of the league, really, was finally back from injury. We didn't know if we'd see him this season, if it'd be too late and he'd be on to PSG, but he has turned out for Corinthians. He came back with 35 minutes left when they were 2-0 up. They duly gave away those 2 goals to Gio and drew 2-2, but I don't think any blame will be attached to young Moscardo. So very good to see him back. But he wasn't the young player of the round. Like you said, usually with this one, we're always waiting on a young player to to turn up and do something special. Nobody really did this week, but that doesn't mean that they weren't impressing. So Gallo had 3 young players under 20s or 20 and under. So there was Romulo, who is a kind of a left-sided centre back, just a 20 years old, and Carlos Amaral, who was a 20-year-old as well, a forward. So they both started the game. They did both come off, but they came off when Gallo had turned the game around. But the winner of the award, George, is a guy who's 2 years younger than both of those. So he's just 18, starting for Gallo, playing 60 odd minutes, I think. And that's Alisson Santana. So what can you tell us about Alisson Santana, if anything?
Well, yeah, Alisson Santana, James, like I said, he's our winner this time. I think just generally, like I said, he didn't really do much in the game as a whole. But I think just and like I said, Gallo did have a few of the young players on there. But I think with him just being a bit younger and he's a bit more of a staple in the Gallo team. He's played 6 matches in Serie A so far, and he's played 19 games in all in in the various cups and the Libertadores and everything like that. So he's getting on to be a regular sort of player for them. Not really doing too much, but he's in there. He's young. He's only 18. He was linked with Chelsea not too long ago. I think in the summer, or sorry, in the winter time maybe. And I think Alisson Santana is a name that maybe people will become familiar with in the Premier League in the not so distant future. We've seen the likes of Guilherme go now. I think he's gone to West Ham, hasn't he? So he's another player off the conveyor belt for of the Brazilian league that I think people will slowly start, or maybe not so slowly, start to become familiar with, a right-sided player, and I think he will go on to bigger things, if you like, in not the too distant future, really.
Yeah, he's a left-footed, right-sided player, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see some potential links to Liverpool as well. I know Liverpool, we have been scouting Brazil quite heavily, and we are looking for that kind of elusive Mo Salah successor, and we're being linked with all sorts of left-footed wingers. So I wouldn't be surprised to see those links cropping up at some point too, as well. But yeah, another exciting player to look out for. There are a few going around, as there always are.
Yeah, I mean, a quick Google search of him, James, will bring up things like Arsenal linked, Alisson Santana, welcome to Arsenal, and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, and that was only from a few months ago. So, yeah, I think it was Arsenal, maybe not Chelsea, that have been sort of linked with him a little bit. So, yeah, like I said, I wouldn't be so surprised to see him soon in follow the likes of Guilherme into the Premier League and and beyond possibly as well. So let's see what he's made of. I mean, I think he gets the award as of default a little bit this time. He didn't do much, but there was, like I said, slim pickings. There was Moscardo, like you said, but he didn't do much either in the game. Nobody really did. And I think Santana, given his age, given the stature in the team already that he has, it seemed right to bring him to people's attentions at this time.
Yeah, they also won the game as well, and he was part of that, and they turned it around. So, yeah, well done to him. I'm sure we'll see him. I'm sure Chelsea were probably in there. They're always sniffing.
Probably, yeah. Like you said, Liverpool as well. Like you said, they've been heavily scouting it, and why wouldn't you? I think a lot of European teams, even the teams in the sort of lower divisions, I'm talking about maybe the Championship, even maybe are starting to be alerted to the fact that there is some, untapped quality in the Brazilian league, and it doesn't have to be, wonder kids who are young. That there's players that are in the 20s, say that are doing a good job that potentially could be seen in the second division of English football. We've heavily touched on Yuri Alberto, James, in this episode, and he was linked with a move to the Championship last summer. So, I won't be so surprised to see him linked again if he continues to put in goals like he did last night. I think it was Middlesbrough he was linked with. He was linked with Middlesbrough. So, yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if there was other Championship sides asking after his name either. So, Yeah, there's untapped quality in the Brazilian league that I think people need to be more alerted to.
Yeah, so that's absolutely the case. Let's move on, George, because we don't want to linger too long on that. So
Yeah.
that's the award. So the young player of the round goes to Alison Santana. So let's look ahead because there is a bit of confusion about what's kind of coming next. I don't know if anybody's really looked at the calendar, but it is a mess. But once you kind of look at it and work it out, it isn't really too bad. So I think well, if you want to run through the fixtures, George, for the weekend, I'll just quickly wrap up the ones that are going to make up the rest of this game week, just so we're not confused. So tomorrow, and we've got a Cruzeiro against Cuiaba. So Cuiaba are going to try and back up that massive win from the other day. On Friday is the rest of the games, basically. So very early Friday morning UK time, we've got Atletico Paranense against Cuiaba, Flamengo and Gremio, Internacional against Sao Paulo. You've got the music. Well done. I wasn't looking for the music, but you've done it.
It's fixture time, isn't it? That's what
That's
we
true.
do.
Bahia against Fortaleza. Then we've got Palmeiras against Vasco, and then on Saturday evening is that's the end of the match. That's the end of this current match day. Palmeiras against Vasco, 1:30 a.m. Friday. So if we ignore those a little bit, George, because we're not going to touch on those during the next week. So if you want to run through do you want to do the table first? Run through the table.
Yeah, okay, I'll run through the table then. But yeah, those 6 games, Thursday and Friday games, like you said, in next week's pod, we'll just run through the results basically and look heavier at the weekend's fixtures kind of thing.
Yeah. So we'll have a full roundup to go for. So that we'll kind of keep an eye on those and go through them, but we won't go in depth on them. So we won't pick a game of the round because we've already done it. Essentially, we just haven't. The round hasn't been completed. So yeah, if you want to go through the table, George, and then we'll just look ahead to what we're going to cover next week.
Yeah, no bother, James. Well, I'll do that then. So like I said at the top of it, we have new leaders, James, in Botafogo. In second position is Flamengo on played 7. They've got 14 points. Botafogo first on 16. Into third, Bahia on 14 as well. 4th to 6th all have 13 points, James. And it reads Sao Paulo, Atletico Paranense, and then my team Galo in 6th position. In 7th on 12 points is RB Bragantino. 8th is Palmeiras on 11 points. 9th to 12th all have 10 points, James. It goes Internacional, Cruzeiro, Fortaleza, and Juventude. 13th is Gremio on 6 points, and then also on 6 is Vasco da Gama in 14th position. Corinthians in 15th position and Fluminense in 16th position all have 6 points. Then the relegation zone, James. 17th is Cuiaba on 5. Also on 5 is Atletico Go in 18th position. 19th position, Cuiaba have leapfrogged Vitória and finally got some points, James. They're on 4 points and put together an unbeaten run too now. And then propping up the table is Vitória on 3 points.
Yeah, they are. I mean, the Vitória, to be fair to them as well, as we said, are 2 games unbeaten, so steadying the ship a little. But they do have Inter next, which I think Inter, obviously my team these days, they kind of want to kind of keep an eye on, really. They've only played 5 games, but they're still in 9th, so they're 6 points off the top. 3 games in hand on Botafogo. So they want to just kind of keep an eye on in case they do creep up, because they could do. They did start well, and they just haven't been able to play, basically. But they did start well under Coudet. So we'll just kind of, they're my kind of want to keep an eye on over the next kind of couple of game days, because obviously they will play twice before we do reconvene on Talking Brazil Ball. Is anything standing out to you in the table? I mean, we're starting to see a little bit of a top kind of 6 or 7, and then Palmeiras Inter. It's hard to say with the games in hand a bit, isn't it?
It is a little bit, James, and it is worth noting that Inter did play on Sunday in the Sudamericana. They beat Ecuadorian side Delfin 1-0.
Nice badge then. It's little dolphin, isn't it? Yellow and blue dolphin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Delfin. Yeah, the Ecuadorian side got the Ecuadorian colours there. I think they're just missing the red, aren't they? There, so
yeah, they could have had a red dolphin. That would have.
Yeah, I mean that would have really mixed it up, wouldn't it? Probably, but yeah, they're coming off 2 games back to back in the Sudamericana. Beat Real Tomayapo, Real Tomayapo, a Bolivian side. They beat them beforehand, and then they beat Delfin on Sunday. So yeah, they're playing on Friday, James. And then, like you said, I mean, it's incredible. Two games in 2 days, and it's league games. You know what I mean? So the turnaround is tremendous. In terms of them, they play Sao Paulo on the Friday morning, and then they play on the Sunday evening at Vitória. So yeah, by that time they could be towards the top end really. And I think it's pretty much nothing's really creeping out at me, like smashing me in the face here, James, about the table right as it is. I mean, the only obvious one is Fluminense towards the bottom end, but other than that, like you said, with the games in hand, it is quite hard to say what's what really. Nothing is really jumping out at me. I mean, Palmeiras again, but they haven't played for, it seems like for a little while now, and again they'll with a win, they'll jump into the sort of top end of the division as well. So, and they play Vasco. So it's
well, let's look at the fixtures because we're picking them out and saying them individually. But let's run through the fixtures so we know what we're looking at for next week instead.
Right.
And then we kind of know where we are with that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, James. So, gosh, let me go like a DJ this time. Let's get the other one back on there and
get the party started.
Run up through the fixtures for, I think it's match day 11 if I'm correct, James. So it starts on Saturday, the 15th of June, 10:30 p.m. UK time. Red Bull Bragantino face Juventude. Then into early Sunday morning, Fluminense face Atletico. And like what you said, is somewhat of a relegation battle at this point. Also, then you go on to 8 p.m. UK time on Sunday, the 16th of June. Atletico Paranaense face Flamengo. Corinthians host Sao Paulo. Vitória hosts Internacional. Then on 10:30 UK time, Criciúma face Bahia. Cuiaba, looking to make it 3 undefeated, host Fortaleza. Also at the same time, Grêmio face Botafogo, and then Vasco da Gama against Cruzeiro, all at 10:30 p.m. Then to round off the match week is Atletico MG Galo against Palmeiras. That's on very early Tuesday morning here, James, 1:30 a.m. and that rounds up match day 11 fixtures.
Great. So yeah, they're the ones we're going to be looking at. So it's not too bad. It's at least we've got a full. It's not kind of fractured. We have a full round of fixtures to look at all in one go. So we are going to pick out the games of the week. I don't know which one you want to go for, George. We've picked out 2. One of them was pretty obvious. It's a big Sao Paulo derby, which is Corinthians against Sao Paulo, which Corinthians could really do with a win after that collapse the other day. And Sao Paulo as well are going relatively well, and that would be a big win for them away at Corinthians. So do you want to do that one, or do you want to look at, we're going to do Vasco Cruzeiro, aren't we? I think because we haven't touched on those 2 all that much. Vasco with a new manager need to bounce back from that game against Flamengo. So we'll look at those 2. Is there one which kind of takes your fancy?
Well, I mean, I like the look of Corinthians against Sao Paulo, that big derby game, but I think I'll I'll let you take that one, James. I'll go with Vasco and Cruzeiro because I know you're quite fond of Corinthians, aren't you? So
Yeah.
I'll let you take that one. I'll take Vasco against Cruzeiro.
Oh well, you're a gentleman, aren't you? Yeah, it should be a good game. That I think, like I say, Corinthians do need a win, but I do fancy Sao Paulo to go and get something. Maybe not a win, but I think they'll pick something up. And Vasco obviously do need to bounce back. They might have announced Felipe Coutinho signing by then. We'll have to see if he is either fit enough to be in the squad or if he's actually been announced at that time. We'll have to hold on and see that one. So that's all to look forward to next week, George. Anything to add before we say goodbye to the listeners?
Not really, James. I think it's just about getting back into a hold of the fixtures and just trying to keep a hold on it. But yeah, as always, great to run down. I think I feel a bit like we've cheated some of the teams because they haven't played yet in this game week. But we're not seasoned pros yet of the league, are we? So I think if we'd have known it, we'd have been able to work it out if we were a little bit more experienced, perhaps in that way.
Well,
But
I think that's a bit I think it depends on the days as well. We'd have had to do it Friday evening or it depends, doesn't it? You can't just review games if they haven't happened yet. So it depends on when it falls as well. So I think we've covered the games that have played, and we haven't done the others because they haven't been played yet. I think simple as that, isn't it?
Well, you can't say any fairer than that, can you? You can't look into the future.
No.
Whatever. Back to the Future, so you can't do that, can you? So yeah, we just got to deal with what we have at this present moment, and I think, like you said, I think we've done that pretty well. So yeah, on to the next one, James. Let's see what these games in this packed kind of. And it's a feast of fixtures, isn't it? Really, and even after Tuesday, it doesn't stop. You've got fixtures on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So it's a feast of Brazilian football, James. And also then we've got the Euros starting as well on the weekend. So it's all to play for.
Yeah, I think the Copa America starts as well at some time soon.
I think that's the weekend commencing the 21st. I think.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's a week on Saturday
A week on Friday, I think it is. It starts. Yeah, so not too long to wait. So we'll be keeping an eye on that and how Brazil do as well, of course, with updates of how they're doing. I guess how as well as the Serie A action.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you to everybody for listening to another episode, and enjoy the week. Enjoy all that football. There is a lot going on, so we'll see you on the flip side. Adios.
Yeah, adios and adios to you, James.
Adios to you, George.
Talking Brazil ball, we're breaking it down. Bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right.